All right. So, Patton, I think we've gotten to know each other really, really well. One of the most interesting things that I learned about you from our last time together was your first sales job living in North Dakota or Montana.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your first entry point at post the military in the sales world.
Yeah. So when I got out of the Army, I took a job with Johnson & Johnson, and I lived in Fargo, North Dakota. So I can speak the language, oh yeah, you betcha. Oh, for sure. Don't you know? So anyway, so I lived in Fargo, but my sales territory was North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, the northern half of Minnesota, and the southern half of Iowa. So I was a road warrior. I spent literally Monday through Friday, out and about, hospital to hospital. And, hospitals in North Dakota and Montana and Minnesota are spread out by hundreds of miles.
Jeez Louise.
So I spent a ton of time behind the windshield of a car, listening to podcasts. Well, I was probably before podcasts were even a thing, but listening to books on tape and doing that. But really, I mean, it was my first sales job ever. And, sales is, eat what you kill. And so I had to learn to hunt and learn to really go find something, find the opportunity and exploit it.
So when we had dinner, we were talking about this, the winters.
Yeah.
When you guys were describing the winters there, I mean, I've never
brutal,
heard
right?
anything about like this. You couldn't go outside. It would turn to frostbite.
No. So one time, I think this is the story I told you. I woke up and I had to be at a 7 a.m. surgery, and I think it was in Bemidji, Minnesota, which is way up north in Minnesota. And I left Fargo, and I got in the car, and the little temperature thing in the car said minus 26 degrees. That's not wind chill. And if you've ever been to North Dakota, you'll know that the wind is always blowing. So wind chill was probably 50, 60, 80 below. I mean, just stupid cold. And I'm out there driving on a 2-lane highway, like literally huge trees on both sides of the road, snow everywhere. And there's no traffic at 4 a.m. out in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota. And so I got to thinking, like, holy cow, I could literally, if I slip off the highway here, I could literally die in the next couple hours. So just be careful.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's really
nuts.
crazy. So, I mean, you were telling me at that time you'd become an expert on the product. You were teaching the doctors how to actually use the equipment and everything. Mm-hmm. What was that? I mean, when you think about that world, relationship, the type of sale, the type of, building a business, what does that look like compared to the mortgage, world today?
Well, it's quite a bit. I mean, there's certainly similarities in any sort of sales job, but it's different in the sense that there are a lot of other stakeholders in that sale. There's not just the doctor. There's the nurses and the technologists. There are all the other people that are going to work in that particular procedure. But then there's also the hospital staff. There's the CFO and there's the purchasing department and all those different people that have to be bought in on what you're doing. So it's a pretty complex sale. Whereas with a mortgage, you're generally dealing with just the customer, just the end user of your product is probably the most important person. And then I guess it's similar in the sense that when you get to, when you start talking about realtors and those relationships, that maybe is analogous to the hospital administrative staff and things like that. But I think medical sales can be vastly more complex.
Got it. And I guess I would imagine from a perspective of sales cycle, well,
it could be a super long one. It depends. So we were selling medical devices. So the medical devices can be, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash outlay and then you're talking reimbursement for different procedures. Like, okay, here's where you're going to make more money on this procedure. Here's how you're going to take better care of patients. And so it could be a much longer sales cycle. And matter of fact, it could be a year, 2-year sales cycle.
Wow. So it's a completely different world today, but at the same time, relationship components that drive
Absolutely.
business.
I mean, all of sales is, you buy from people you like, and you trust. And so it's a matter of making sure that people know who you are and like you and trust you, and that you're providing them with value. I mean, that's essentially what sales is, right? And when I first got out of the Army, or when I was thinking about getting out of the Army, there were people that said, "Oh, why don't you do sales?" And I thought, sales? because I'm thinking like the used car guy, right? And you're like, the last thing I want to do is go buy a car today, right? That's miserable for all of us. That's not who you want to be.
Yep.
And then I read a couple of sales books. I'm like, wait a minute, they have a need, and you're providing them value to meet their need that they have. And you're like, wait a minute, that makes sense.
Yep.
When you think about what sales really is, it's providing value to somebody.
Absolutely.
So learning, once you learn that, and if that's something that speaks to your heart, like people see that, right? So
people feel it too.
Feel it,
we talked a lot about your client experience and the loyalty you've built. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's when you're in a business like this, the way you're rewarded for your sale is referrals.
That's
and
right.
It's called great client experience. So, talking through your transition, you did that for the better part of
12 years.
Okay. So you thought at that time, that's what you were doing. That was your career path.
Yeah.
So I know there was a interim pit stop on the end with the startup that you joined, but when you made the decision to go in the mortgage business, what did that look like? And what was that first 18 months like?
So when I first got into mortgages, it was in a consumer direct call center. I knew nothing about mortgages. Like I'm a pretty smart dude. I had purchased a few houses in my life. I'd actually used a VA loan, but didn't even know it. Didn't know you could shop for a mortgage if you were, like if I had been buying a house right then, I wouldn't even known to shop for different, talk to different people.
Like, thought it was one provider.
Yeah, well, there it is. Go talk to that guy and he'll give you a mortgage. Okay, cool. And so, I get into this call center. I didn't know what LTV was. I didn't know what DTI was. I was basically given a headset and a computer and said, okay, click here and it'll dial and maybe somebody will answer, maybe they won't. And I just start talking to them about what they want to do. I'm like, is that it? Is that the training? And they go, yep, that's the training. Go do it. Okay, cool. So I started doing it. I'd start having conversations with people. And every time I'd have a conversation, I'd walk over to my boss's office and go, hey, so here's what he said. What's a subordination? What's a second mortgage? Like, what's this mean? What's that mean? And over the course of time, we kind of learned some things. That was the first 5 years of my mortgage career was really consumer direct. You buy the lending tree leads, you buy they sell them to 10 banks and you're fighting and scratching and clawing. and really what I think one of the things that taught me was, number one, you got to shake off, like every day it's like Groundhog Day, literally every single day. You have to get in there and the next day you got to brush all the good stuff, bad stuff, whatever happened the day before, it doesn't matter. You got a clean slate today and you got to go do it. You got to go execute on your plan and your vision today. You got to execute. Doesn't matter if you had a great day and did 5 loans yesterday. Today, nobody cares. Go do it again.
100%. And sometimes, like in that world, because I did the same exact thing. It's like sometimes you're competing till the very end. It's not like you get a referral and they're good with you for the whole transaction. Sometimes it's like lending tree, other lenders are calling them till the end. It can be a tough business.
Well, especially as the rates start to move a little bit, and you've got a locked pipeline. You got 10 loans or whatever, and they're locked, and all of a sudden the rates drop. You're like, oh man, because that's when the recycled leads start coming through the Quickens and the wherevers, and they start getting blown up. So yeah, it's a constant dogfight. And I had people go, well, this guy's going to beat you by $20 on this fee if you don't match it. And I'm like,
are you kidding me?
$20? Like, really?
Wow.
Yeah, like, it's crazy.
When did it click? Because I kind of look back when I was like, even hearing you go through that, and I remember like today we talk about things and we're all about preventing issues from happening, making sure it's a smooth process. Looking back at my first years, I didn't even know I was throwing, stuff in, but I was throwing stuff in. When did it kind of click for you where you were like, I understand the manufacturing process. I understand the whole thing.
I would tell you, there's still stuff I'm learning today on that whole thing, to like, as you get deeper and deeper into, especially, someplace here where I'm still learning how you guys do business, and it's different how we do business here compared to how business was done before. And you're constantly learning. But I'd say it was probably a good 12 to 18 months before you really have a feel for what the mortgage cycle is like. And, once you start getting a customer call you back from a year, 2 years ago and go, hey, do you remember me? Can you still, I need more help on a mortgage. Can you help me? And then it starts to click and go, wait a minute, why haven't I been following up with that guy from 2 years ago? Why haven't I been staying in contact with my past customers? But I'll tell you the one thing, for me, it was the whole mortgage business. I'll tell you, I don't know if I've told you this story or not, but one of my very, very first loans was a single mom in Las Vegas. And she had a 10, 12-year-old son. And she called, it was a Lending Tree lead. And I took the call, and I call her, and she goes, hey, look, I want to do a refinance, cash out of my house, and pay off my debt. And we pull a credit. And she's drowning in debt. She's never missed a payment on anything, but drowning in consumer debt, has credit cards and whatnot. And I go, look, we can do a refinance and pull cash out. We'll be able to pay off all this debt, except for maybe like 10 grand. And she goes, okay, that's great. Let's do it. So we get everything moving, get the appraisal order. The appraisal comes in like $30,000 high. So on a conventional refinance, that gives me the ability to go an additional $24,000 on the loan amount higher. So I call her back and I say, hey, guess what? We can pay off that last $10,000. We can pay it off. As a matter of fact, I can give you another 10 grand or so above and beyond that. If you want that extra $10,000, I can give it to you. And she starts bawling and she goes, oh my gosh, I owe my mom $10,000. My mom's been helping me. I owe her $10,000. That would be amazing. So we closed that loan on December 23rd of 2014. So I'd been in the business like 2 months roughly at that point. So it was one of the very first loans I did. And that's when it hit me like, holy cow, like this business, you can change somebody's life in a matter of, a few short weeks. And that's when I was just hooked by the mortgage business in general. Like, okay, you can earn a living for your family, but you can change people's lives along the way if you understand who they are and what they need to accomplish. And if you can look at their situation and see what it might look like on the other side of a mortgage and give them advice on how to shape things and create the future that they might be interested in being a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that was 10 years ago this month. It's crazy.
9 years ago.
9 years ago. That's crazy. It's so when you think about that clicking on, obviously there's the personal income perspective, but really at the end of the day, like what makes you do what you described earlier, where you're coming in every day and just like, new day, finding new value to the customer. It's really that relationship with the clients that make that, motivate you.
Yeah.
For you, we talked a little bit about sales culture. Obviously, I grew up in direct to consumer as well. Sales culture there can be very competitive. It's like total locker room atmosphere. I have a couple guys here that used to work with me back then. And, I guess for you, when you think about like, we talked about an LO that does $2 million a month being like recognized by a company. What made you go from the leap of, what you thought was great to whatever the next level was?
Well, I mean, part of it is I think every salesperson should have, or hopefully has, this internal drive to win.
Yep.
Right. That's what we all want as leaders. We want to recruit, we want to train, and we want to have those people on our team that just something inside them just isn't going to let them lose. Right. Winners win. Right.
Yep.
And that's kind of the culture that you built here. And that's what excites me about being here, is that you've collected up a whole bunch of people. Hopefully we'll collect up a bunch more that want to win. Right. And so that's part of it. But, for me, it's once I started seeing that I had a book of business after 4, 5, 6 years in the industry. And then I started seeing people start to come back to me. And then it kind of clicked in my mind, like, wait a minute, if you talk to these people from before, they have to do another mortgage. They have friends that are doing mortgages. And they had a great experience with me. If I call them, they pick up the phone, like, holy cow. And all of a sudden, and it was kind of serendipitous, right? Then we had COVID happen and rates dropped significantly. And I had a ton of people that had VA loans at, 4.5%, 5%, whatever. And now they can get 2.75. And my phone started to explode. And so part of it was I just had laid the groundwork for years with having, taking great care of clients, and then got a little bit lucky with when COVID happened. But also, I've done a really good job since then of having that conversation with people throughout. That's when I really learned, like, wait a minute, I can do a lot better in asking people for referrals and making sure that they know that I'm their lender for life, that they never have to call another mortgage person, that they can call me back again and again and again and again. Anytime even if they just want to talk and go, hey, I'm thinking about, like, make sure that's me you call.
Yep.
And so I think it all kind of ties together.
Absolutely. So when you think about, obviously we've had so many conversations, and we're doing some things at the bigger level that are ready for us to scale or to grow a military lending division. When you think about, like, most loan officers would look at you and they're like, that guy's the king of the mountain. And our first conversation, we sat down in Arizona when I came out there, like, first hour and a half was all the things you want to fix in your business. And I was like, man, like, if you were to survey a lot of LOs, they'd be like, man, that guy's got it all figured out. And that's what I kind of, like, loved about it. Was like, your focus was like, hey, I did good, but I feel like if I did X, Y, and Z, and I dialed this in, I dialed that in, maybe I could do double. And that's not the way a lot of people think. So for you, what has that looked like for you? Was it a slow process of identifying, like, CRM process, client experience? Like, how did you get to the point where you're like, you know what, this is what I want my business to be?
You know what? It's funny. My wife.
Yes.
She challenges me a lot. She's super conceptual and a high level thinker. And a lot of times I'm down here in the weeds a lot of times. And I, over the last, especially 3-4 years, when things got really busy, I didn't have room to think beyond the transactions and while still maintaining the relationship in those transactions. And she's always been like, hey, what happens when rates move? What happens when rates go higher? What happens? Are you still doing all those things that you? I've been like, yeah, I'm doing them. I'm working, and maybe I'm not doing them as well as I could. Now we're really hyper focused on all those details, because there are so many things. I mean, there are things I look at, the team we have here. There are a lot of people that do a lot of things way, way better than I do. And so I'm looking around, I've got my eyes wide open, and I'm watching
everything,
everything that's going on, oh man, I can pick up that little piece. I can get a little bit better on this. I can get a little bit better here. And when you start to piece together that, just constant improvement, right? All you need to do is improve a little bit each day, every day, get a little bit better at your craft. Whether that's knowing your guidelines a little bit better, or knowing a little bit more about some other loan product, or adding in different tools into your toolbox. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And my hammer has been, the VA loan, right? And I'm running around pounding nails. But I probably should have a screwdriver and a wrench and all those other things in my toolbox. So I'm trying to pick those up. Yeah,
it's awesome. And you're 100% right. Like, her vision and the things that she's brought to, even, like, to be honest with you, some of the things she's brought to my attention, we talked about that, the couple that you went to dinner with in Colorado, like, just little things that are so meaningful and so impactful. So, when you think about this next phase of your business, how are you, working through managing that? Is it, hey, we're getting our team in order first, we're focused on the experience? How do you manage all that?
We're super focused on our team. I think if you take great care of your people, if you know them and they know you, and you can provide them an opportunity and a place, an environment where they can succeed and be the highest and best versions of themselves. But you got to know them really well, right? You have to know what motivates them. You have to know what their skill set is. Like, we all have our own superpower.
Yeah.
And my superpower and your superpower are vastly different. But when you put 10 people in a room, there's 10 different superpowers most likely. And how do you put people in the right position to be able to use that superpower to accomplish maybe more than they ever thought is possible, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're really focused on is our team and knowing them well enough to know what their superpower is, and then going, okay, how can I use that for the team's benefit? And then how can I contribute with my superpower to fill in the gaps behind them? Once that is in place, now you have an opportunity to do something that's fantastic. And the cool thing about our team is, something that I always missed when I left the military was you've got, in the military, regardless of what branch of service you were in, you have a mission.
Yep.
You have a high level mission, and all of you are focused on what is that we have to accomplish, and you're headed towards that all the time. And no matter what happens, you can look up and go, okay, that's our mission. Let's go get that. And so with this division, I think when you collect up, we've got now 6, 8, 10 people that are all ex-military people. And when you're working side by side with that person, you look at them and you go, well, I know you, I like you, I trust you. And we've got that mission. Let's go get that together. Let's charge that hill. Let's do. And so we all have that mission to be the absolute best for our veterans. And so now we're headed towards that.
Yeah, it's really good. I think like one of the pain points that I've experienced is like making sure you keep everybody focused on the mission, because the day to day, the pain points that come up. We talked a little bit earlier about, some of Jay's pain points. Like they can take you off track a little bit. Sometimes it could be a bad day, a bad week, a bad couple loans can make you start, questioning things or whatever. So for you, when you think about your people, what approach do you take to make sure it's like, hey, we're going to get there. We're still fixing things. We're still working through things. Remember the mission.
Yeah. So the analogy that I've always kind of fallen back on is, I was a helicopter pilot in the Army. And when you're a helicopter pilot, like specifically a Black Hawk pilot, you have two pilots sitting side by side. Right on the dashboard, right in front of both pilots is a thing, and there's a light there, and it says master caution. In the center console, you have 150 lights, and they tell you things like low oil pressure or, whatever, hydraulic pump failure, or, all these different things that can go wrong with a helicopter. You have all these warning lights. And then if any one of those goes on, it triggers that light right in front of your face to turn on. And when that happens, you don't know what it is. Your eyes have to go inside the cockpit, and you have to look at the main caution panel to figure out what it is and what is the emergency, and do I have to do something right now in order to keep us all alive? Okay. And so what happens is a lot of times it could be a minor thing. It could say hydraulic pump failure. Well, guess what? We have 3 of them. We're probably okay if one of them's down. There's redundant systems. So that's not something where we all have to freak out. It's literally like, okay, like the leak stopped, or we have, low oil pressure or something. Okay, well, it's not critical. We have time to go find a good spot to land. But then there are some things like if I don't do these certain actions and flip these switches, like we're all going to die. Right? So you have to know the difference between, is it a real emergency, or is it just something that you have to keep in the back of your mind? It's something you have to fix, and we can fix it later. And so a lot of times that's what a loan is, right? We have issues, and maybe an underwriter made a mistake, or maybe a processor made a mistake, or maybe I made a mistake, or somebody made a mistake in the loan. And is it so critical that we have to drop everything today and it's all hands on deck, or is it something that's kind of small? We need to tweak things, but whatever it is, we need to fix the issue for our borrower. Let's fix it. And then if we need to go AR this afterwards and have a post-mortem and go, okay, gosh, what happened? This was terrible for everybody. And we need to fix some things, or was it just a thing that happened? Somebody made a mistake, let's not do that again. And so there's some things that are super critical, some things not so much. And just keep it in your mind that somebody's still got to fly the helicopter. Even if there's things going on, you can't everybody look inside and crash the helicopter, because all the pilots are looking inside at the one little light that didn't even matter. So
That makes sense. I mean, that's a really good analogy. And I think about it with team members. It's like same thing is like making sure, hey, we're going to come back to that one little thing because we know it's important to fix at some point. But, we still got to stay focused on.
Yeah, but we're all humans, right? Everybody makes little errors. And that's the other part of it is as a leader, if you punish the human mistake instead of using it as a coaching opportunity or a training opportunity, people are going to be less likely to make decisions on their own. They're just going to be waiting for you to have to tell them. And I don't have time to tell everybody what to do on every part of their job every day. You got to have people that are out there, pushing the envelope on what they're capable of doing. And sometimes that leads to some mistakes.
Yeah. For you, when it comes to your learning experiences in this industry, you've had leaders, you've had team members, you've gone through, changing companies. What has been the biggest learning lesson for you in this business when it comes to how you're building this division today and how you're leading people or thinking about building, that organization for your team?
Well, I think it has to be people focused. And it goes back to knowing your people and them knowing you and being vulnerable with them. And, I think culturally, UMortgage has this figured out. Like you've built a culture where people are interacting with each other authentically, just from top to bottom. You see it on all the workplace chats. You see it, people interacting and genuinely wanting to help each other. And that's, when you're in that environment, that's where everybody can succeed.
The coaches, you talk about like the military or, in our environments, like the leaders are there not to be the people that hold you accountable. It's like your peers that we're working with in our coaching program and our sales org are the ones that hold each other accountable. It's like, hey, you're the top of the leaderboard this week. I want to get there. Like, that's how everybody thinks. And when they're not doing it, they're holding each other accountable for the activities they need to be doing daily. For you going to, like, I guess if you were to ask, why is somebody going to join your team? What if you were talking to not let's just say a young recruit or somebody that's going to be considering joining a different team, why your team? What can they expect as a part of your thing? And it's not the comp and all that other stuff. It's like, where am I going to be in the future?
Yeah. If you look back, what I would show them is kind of a track record of bringing people onto my team that have absolutely no mortgage experience and showing this new person like, okay, let me show you this person I worked with a number of years ago that has now, accomplished this level in the mortgage industry. Here's a guy that I brought in and is now owns his own company in the mortgage business, owns his own brokerage. And here's a guy that's worked with me for 4 years and look at what he's accomplished and what he's done for his family. And then I would say you can talk to any one of these people and just ask them what you get when you work with me. And I would tell you, I'll pick up my phone and I will answer every question that you have at any time, day or night. You will get absolutely 100% support from me. Anything you need from a support standpoint, you're going to get. And you're going to get my full commitment to your success. And, if your goal is to be here, we can figure out you got to start here. You got to take these steps, but here's how we get to this final goal. And it may take, this may be a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 year process. But we can backwards plan and we can go, okay, here's what you need to do today. Here's what you need to learn. Here's what I can teach you. And, I've got a lot of experience at this point and, being a complete grunt on the phones, dialing until my ears were bleeding and my eyes were bleeding and, 400 phone calls later after the day. There's that. And then there's the referral-based network that you want to get to. And I know all the steps in between, so I can help you get there. So,
absolutely. I think it's like almost like even I had an experience. I met with some of the people that are on your team or potentially joining your team when we were out in Arizona. And, one of the guys that was joining your team that hadn't been with you before just, for him, he was in a great situation, or he's in a great situation. But what stood out to him was, it's more or less the alignment on nobody's pushing him to be greater. And, you have an environment where like you're not slowing down. And if you're not slowing down, everybody else has to either speed up or get on your level. And that was very attractive to him.
Well, I think that the cool thing too is that in this environment, right? When we start talking about just VA loans in general, like I'm pretty good at VA loans. But you look at my team, you look at the people on our team right now with Jay and with Ray and with JD, and, you start adding other people that are good at VA loans. And all of a sudden you start building a culture of continuous improvement and learning little nuanced things from all the people around you. And it goes back to that mission, right? If you're all focused on the mission and you're all trying to get better every day, you're going to learn so much from the people around you. And then all of a sudden it starts to attract, whether it's more other loan officers that go, hey, I want to be a part of that because what they're doing is cool and what they're doing is special. And by the way, we like each other and we trust each other. We get along with each other. We want to hang out. We want to talk. We want to be on the same text message threads. All that sort of stuff starts building synergy and pretty soon it builds critical mass, and it creates something that's cool. And it may not, it may be another year, it may be 2 years, but all of a sudden, pretty soon the whole industry is going to be like, wait a minute, if I need a VA loan, I need to go talk to these guys. They're doing something awesome. And people that are VA focused originators are going to be like, I can be even better if I go there.
100%. I think one of the things I learned through this process specifically is there's so many people that focus on VA loans for money. That's the mortgage industry. And you and I have already had some conversations about LOs that have come to us that have kind of that mindset. And that's not the business that you're in.
No.
So, for you, like the standard that you focused on, the people specifically, where you're like, hey, I'm okay with the guy who's only doing $18 million a year. I'm okay with the developmental person or somebody that's at a stage of their career that they can develop. What standard you want to create and help them get to. How, as a consumer or, as a real estate agent, understanding like why that approach is different and valuable to the end user, to everybody involved, how would you articulate that?
Well, for a realtor, first of all, you have to work with somebody who is good at VA loans. And I think the numbers say that only about 10% of loan officers in the country do more than like 3 VA loans a year. You can't possibly know all the nuance when you do 3 a year. And so you have to work with somebody who's good at it, and somebody who connects with the borrower on a level that's beyond, I need to make a couple $1,000s to pay my mortgage or to pay my car note or whatever it is. And so I think when you meet people that truly care about the customer, about the borrower, people who have walked in those shoes, who've lived that life, and have a connection with them that goes beyond just an LO and a borrower. Like we have there is such thing as like the brotherhood of veterans, where you care more probably than somebody that didn't serve, or that you just have a connection and a trust. The speed of trust is higher. It's faster. You're going to accomplish things more efficiently and effectively when you have that trust factor. I don't know if that answered your question really.
No, I think it does. I think what you're saying is it adds another layer of the depth of the relationship.
Yes. And
an understanding of, that end user, that home buyer, that person that might be going through this experience for the first time, but you have the depth of knowing, they change locations, what they've gone through to get there.
Sure. When somebody's PCSing from, across the country to a place they've never been before, guess what? I've done that. I've done that a number of times. Oh, you're going to Fort Hood? Like, never been there. Well, who do I know there? And I'm in Korea. Like, I'm going to Fort Hood. Who do I know at Fort Hood? Like that was before Facebook or anything.
Yep.
You couldn't even look people up. You just hope you know somebody. So, I know what those feelings are like. I know what the wife and kids are going through, and I think that's important to be able to empathize, right? It's a lot easier to empathize and understand when you've done that.
When you've been in their shoes, for sure.
Yeah.
And I would almost say like one of the other unique things I've observed is like you served your time and you didn't just transition out of the military world.
No.
You are heavily involved in the community. And I think that's a part of like the ongoing piece is like each generation of, West Point grads or, whatever the people are from different areas of the Army or the military, like they've had different experiences because they've been in at different times. Mm-hmm. But you're educating, you're doing things, events, and being part of gatherings that are the next generation. Why is that important to you specifically?
Well, I think, part of it is that's the community of people. I mean, the veteran community is relatively small, but I guess it's more comfortable for me to be. I would much rather be in a room of 100 veterans than 100 random people, even if they're random veterans, right? I'd rather be in that room of 100 veterans.
Yep.
Because we're going to find something where we connect with on more than just a superficial level. We can connect on something where we have shared experiences. Heck, we may know. You'd be shocked how many times I've talked to somebody and they go, "Wait a minute, you went to West Point?" I go, "Yeah." And they go, "Do you know so and so?" And I'm like, "He was my roommate," and they knew him from some other. It's just crazy how small it is in such a big community of people, right? So anyway, I would just rather be a part of that. And I've always been a part of that, and I love to talk to the younger guys that are still on active duty, especially when they're especially young West Point grads. And one of the things I always tell them is that, like, hey, don't forget about, like, right now when you're in the Army and you're going from place to place to place to place, it's really easy to run into one of your classmates that you haven't seen in 3 or 4 years. You run into them in the commissary or something like that and go, "Oh, hey," you talk to them for 5 seconds and leave. But did you really connect with them? Did you really, did you make sure you still have each other's cell phone numbers and, stuff like that? Because when you get 10 years further away and another 10 years further away and another, 5 years after that, and you start getting down the road in life and life things are happening to you and you're not in this little tiny community all doing the same things, you're going to need the support of the people around you. And who better to get that from than these people that you've, fought with and bled with and cried with and, all this tight community of people. And so you can find that in your local community, regardless of where you are, by being involved in like veterans groups and just being part of the veteran community.
Absolutely. So for you, when you think about consumer, well, it's somebody that's ready to buy a house or they might be 5 years away from buying a house, what's your approach to educating or onboarding a consumer for, they're interested in it pre-approved, or like you said earlier, you're like, I didn't even know I did a VA loan the first time. So
right.
What experience do you try to provide to make sure they know what they're getting and they feel educated?
Well, I mean, education is the key to all of this. And there's so many misconceptions about VA loans. There's so many misconceptions about mortgages in general. For those of us that do this every single day, it's pretty simple. Like we can talk about a loan in a matter of 5 seconds and 20 seconds probably. You can convey to me the basics of a loan. I'll go, yeah, that was approvable, or no, that wasn't. But the average person that's out there has no idea. Really, am I going to qualify for this house or that house or the other house? Or what do I need to, if I can't, what do I need to do to get there? And so I think it all starts with education, absolutely everything. And so I guess I look at it and I go, I've been through some really tough times in my life where my credit score wasn't what it should have been, right? Where maybe some things had happened that I didn't want to happen. And you go, okay, wait a minute. What do I need to do to get to here? And in this business, there aren't a whole lot of people that are willing to talk to that person that's got crappy credit or had gone through, a bankruptcy or a foreclosure or a divorce or whatever, and that threw their life for a loop that they didn't anticipate, right? Very few people are willing to talk to that person. They go, oh, your credit's 500. See ya.
Yep.
Click. But I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me, and I go, okay, you know what? Let me give you some education. Here's what you're going to need to do over the next 6 months or a year, and then I follow back up with them, and they call me back, and we go, okay, here's where we are, and here's where we're going, and remember, keep your eye on the prize. I'll help you get there. If you're willing to work with me, I will help you get where you need to go, and that again, at the end of that process, when they buy a house, I mean, how good does that feel?
Feel valuable.
I'd rather help that person get to their very first house as a first-time home buyer than the guy that's got millions that could pay cash for
doesn't appreciate it.
Yeah, it doesn't really appreciate what you do, and it doesn't feel that nearly as good. Oh, you got perfect credit and a great job and no debt. Yeah, I can help you buy a house.
Yep.
Like, you're not going to cry when I tell you you're approved.
Yeah.
Right? The crying sometimes is better.
Yeah. They're not anticipating a no. They know,
right.
They have certainty.
Know. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. So I guess, one last question I would have for you is your vision for military lending, the bigger picture perspective when we zoom out, get out of the day to day, what's the why behind, what we're building here and what, we're trying to create for our team members, our customers, and so on.
The why is this industry has been horrible about VA loans just in general. Too many misconceptions, too many realtors out there that don't like them, too many loan officers that are bad at them, too much where you go to you know what? You've got people that offered to give their life for this country and they earned a benefit, and by golly, they should be able to use it, right? They should be able to use that benefit. And so when I look back at this 5 years from now, what I'd like to see is that we have a reputation across the industry that everybody knows. When it's not even a thing. When somebody goes, "What's UMortgage known for?" One of those, the top couple of things is they're great at VA loans. They've got a whole team of people that is passionate about doing a great thing for that borrower. And I mean, for a lot of reasons, but I mean, it just feels like the patriotic thing to do.
Yeah.
It feels like the right thing to do. And just knowing all the stories that I've heard over the years about bad experiences with VA loans, we need to change that. And I think we can be a big part in making that change across the country.
Completely agree. This has been awesome. Appreciate it. Great session. Awesome job.
Thank you, sir.
I learned a lot too.